Hello everybody and welcome to this tutorial in which I'm going to show you how we can work with light and color in architectural spaces. We will start first by looking actually how colors with light in Blender mix. For example, here you can see a screenshot of the Blender interface having 6 lights showing the red, green, and blue, and cyan, magenta, and yellow. Then we will actually go into a small architectural tunnel, going to build it, and then see how we can illuminate the inside of this tunnel through colored glasses using a sunlight. The next assignment will be this architectural space, which is quite nice to observe how we can really create nice illusions and plays with architecture and light. For example, pay attention to these openings where the yellow light comes through, and then in the back, the yellow wash over the wall, how this is a nice gradient from the left to the right side. The following assignment is a small studio with some furniture pieces and various different light types. Here we can explore, for example, how we can simulate an LED strip under the cabinet or LED strips behind the cabinet, and also create actually pretty nice renderings. We further look into various light types, for example, mesh lights like these spheres on the ground, how to create a lampshade that is actually translucent. We will look into a few more other lights, and then we actually go into the interesting part, colorizing just one object in the scene, and then pay attention to how this object will look when we change the light color. And you can see that this cyan chair in yellow light looks actually green. It's kind of black with red, blue with magenta. And with blue, well, looks kind of bluish purplish. And then we will go to the last assignment, this outdoor scene. We're going to build this and then add all these different lights and set an environment. You see the sky and create this really beautiful rendering. And as you see, this is actually not only a nice perspective rendering, but the image to the right is also pretty cool looking plan view, kind of like a lighting study. Okay, with all that said, let's do it. Before we get started, let's set up actually our rendering environment. So we are using cycles and GPU. And for the viewport, 20 samples for rendering and denoising is pretty much okay for this exercise, specifically for simple scenes, exterior scenes. When we are more in interior scenes, this might not be enough. We might have to go up to 50 or even 100. Since this is just an exercise to explore how lighting works in various architectural environments, simply play with these values based on the machine you have available. And the last thing we want to do, go to color management and here set the contrast to high contrast. Okay, very good. With all that, let's go. When working with colored light, it's actually very important to understand how light interacts with each other and how bright, for example, a color is. To visualize this, let's go ahead and we make a plane. Press N, in this plane we make 10 feet. Then Shift A and add a UV sphere. The size is fine. Right click, shade smooth. Go top view, Shift A, and then we add point light. We move this point light down a little bit and then also a little bit up. There we are. Let's go ahead and turn on the render engine. There we are. So this light right now is white. Let's go ahead and we make this light red. Then top view. Switch to 3D cursor, Shift D and rotate 120 degrees. Shift D, R, and 120 degrees. This light now we make green. And then this light we make blue. So we take a look at this. What is quite interesting to see is how now each individual light emits the color, and green is pretty bright. Blue seems not to be very bright, and red, no, it's kind of like there in between. But also, what's interesting is to see what happens in the shadows. You see, the shadow here is the mix of green and red. Kind of like looks yellowish. Red and blue, kind of like violet. Green and blue, a little bit cyan. You can select these points. I'm holding the Option key and I'm sliding the lights up, or I'm sliding the lights down. So they're getting closer or further away from the ground. Let's maybe increase the brightness a little bit for each light. There we can see this yellow actually much, much better. It's quite nice. So let's turn this overlay back on. We can actually, for the moment, turn the rendering off. I select all these three lights. I press Shift D, R, and then 60 degrees. So this light will be yellow. Now yellow is green and red. This light will be cyan. Cyan is green and blue. And this light will be magenta, which is red and blue. Turn the rendering back on. You can see that actually that these other colors are pretty bright compared to the primary colors. So let's actually select light 1, 2, and 3. M, new collection, RGB. And then we can turn that off. Now we have yellow, magenta, and cyan. So they're actually pretty bright colors. But also here, cyan and yellow now make green, magenta and cyan make blue. And then the yellow and magenta is kind of like reddish. So we can just select those. M, new collection, and CMY. Okay, we don't have, since we don't print. RGB is like light colors, red, green, blue, and CMYK is actually the colors we print with. But hey, since we're dealing possibly with LED lights, now we can this way basically mix all the different colors. And if also here one more time as a closing argument or observation, pay attention to how bright some colors are and how dark maybe some colors are. To equalize then the colors, if something is too dark, we can simply give that individual light a little bit more power. Or if a light is too bright, we simply lower the power of that colored light. But essentially, that's the way then how you can create these various colors. And the really interesting takeaway here is really to see how colors in what degree kind of like mix. And this is all on a white surface. Now, since this is a white surface, let's do this. It's actually quite interesting. What happens when we make this red or yellow or green? There you can see the blue, magenta, the red at the bottom looks like orange. So this will be very useful to keep in mind when we work with um, light inside interior space that is colored, and then also furniture objects which is colored. Look here, there's actually no drop shadow. It's basically it's being eaten up by the color of the ground. Same here or here. You don't see it. It's there, you just don't see it. It blends together, has the same value. Don't trust me? Here, take a look. There it is. And we're back. Cool. Okay, enough of display. This is done. Our first room is a nice tunnel. So let's go to Add Plane. Press N for the property panels. The x-axis is around 7 feet. The y direction is around 13 feet. Because this has a scale factor, we'll go ahead and apply this. Then we can go into a 3D view, go into edit mode, press E to extrude. Since we work in feet, just type in 10 and enter. 10 feet. Then we go ahead and select these front faces, press X and say delete. There we are. The nice thing about working in Blender in general is also you can work very modular. We're going to make a tunnel, but we build only one element and then actually we will, yeah, copy it. We would like to have a nice window here, perfectly centered. So we can use the loop cut right at the center, click, and then that's it. I select these 3 edges, press X and dissolve these edges. No, actually not this one, dissolve. There we are. Then these 2 edges I select, and then via the bevel command, we can bevel it. The width here we can set to, let's say, 4 feet. Actually, that's the radius, so because of 2 feet diameter, then 4 feet. Okay, very nice. I would like this window to start actually at a height of 40 inches from the ground. So I can use the knife tool. Click, because this is the y-axis, I press Y and click and press enter. You see I cut in a new line. With the selection tool, I can select this line, GG, move this one down till the bottom. So this is lined up. And then I can G and Z move this one up. Because we work with feet, if I type in 42, it's 42 feet. It's not what I want. So backspace, backspace. But when I type in the equal sign and type in 42 and then inches and enter, there we are. Or it didn't. Okay, let's do it one more time. GZ equal sign 42 and inches. Ah, there it is. So you just press the equal sign. You don't have to press it twice. That was my mistake. So let me do this one more time. GZ, press the equal sign. So you start a equation 42 and inches, enter. Very good. Let's do the same here. K is actually for the knife. Click, this is the y-axis. So press Y and click and enter. Then we can select this edge. GG, move back, move it this way. And if entering the value up here is too complicated, we can move it a little bit. And then here we simply say this should be 33 inches. Very good. Very nice. So what we can do now is we can select everything. And this edge basically we delete. There. Very good. And A, select everything, spacebar, and type in solidify. There we are. And then here it tells us, well, how much. So let's say 12 inches. But I would like this to be to the opposite. So I put a minus in front, goes to the outside. So that's actually how easy it is to create a thickness. If when you press Shift Spacebar and you don't see this command to the search bar, go to Key Map and then turn Search on. Alternatively, and just undo this step, I can also go to Modifier, Generate, Solidify, 1 foot to the outside. Yeah, the result is kind of crazy, complex. This looks much better now. Very good. There we are. If I want, I can also apply this. Then it is the real geometry. Cool. Now we would like to have 6 of these pieces. So let's go ahead, generate an array, but along the y-axis. Click Z. Okay, it goes to the correct direction. So up here. 6 pieces. Nice. Here, that's when we would like to cap. So Shift A, add the plane. G, move this over. Then I go into edit mode. Point select, select 1 point. G, hold control and snap. And you see how I'm via G moving, holding control, snapping, and then left mouse button click. Right click in object mode and origin to geometry. So we cap this one. Looks pretty good. We would like to have individual windows here too. So Shift A, add a plane. GZ, go into edit mode and then G, hold control. Yeah, there it snaps. Good. Select these 2 points along the x-axis and snap along the y-axis and snap. E and Z, hold control, snap, click, done. In object mode, origin to geometry. No, Shift D and Y, hold control, Shift D, Y. Control, Shift D, Y, hold control, Shift D, Y, hold control, and one more time, Shift D, Y, hold control, click. Very good. Look at this. Looks quite nice. Let's add a camera. There's our camera. That's a y-axis. There we are. 90 and 0 and 0. Let's actually right clicks, split this. We can go into the camera view. The camera is horizontal portrait, but our object is, no, our camera is landscape. Our object is portrait. So we need to flip the orientation. So 1080 by 90/20. Then the camera we can move up. Zip. Move back a little bit. There. And you see that the image is a little bit bigger, so we can, for example, try to frame this a little bit more. And here, let's zoom in. There. Maybe a little bit up. Okay, that's pretty good. Very nice. So let's move this one to here. This is actually our building. There. This in the back. That is actually our wall. And then these will be our windows. Let's add a sunlight. I go to a front view. Shift A, light and sun. Move this up. Rotate this. Go to here. Z and render. Boom. Pitch black. There's no light. Well, there's light, but well, the windows we have block everything. Let's go back into the camera view. Select this, and now we can figure out what can we do. So let's add a material. And Now, window in real life is made out of glass, has a thickness 2. Here we just have a paper model. So all we want to do is have a transparent material. So we are going to switch this principled BSDF shader to transparent. And look at that. There it is. So click, 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 click. Shift click this one now, and then we say Control L, link materials or object link materials. Plonk. Now all these windows actually are sharing the same material. The sunlight maybe we can make a little bit stronger. Oh, look at this. Looks nice and bright. Can rotate the sunlight to play with this a little bit. Very good. So we have RGB, red, green, blue, and red, green, blue. And then in between we have yellow, cyan, and magenta. So kind of like we're dealing with 6 colors here. Now, because we linked the same material to all these objects, you see there's a 6. So I say we call this one red. See this all red. And now we click on this number. So it's really only red. And then let's go to RGB and make this red. Then we go to here. What's the next one? That is actually yellow. So how do we do yellow? So that's red and green. Whoops. There. And then this will be just green. And you start noticing how we are colorizing actually everything. This is now cyan. That is blue and green. And then we have just blue. And then the last one is magenta, which is red and blue. There we are. So you see what's actually quite nice in the study. If we take a look at the this rendering once it is done, how basically we kind of like can create a rainbow effect, or also how we can fill the space kind of like with colored light. You notice based on the brightness actually of the color, yellow is pretty bright, cyan is pretty bright, blue not really. No, they also emit a certain level of brightness. You see in front of yellow it's much brighter. In front of red it's not as bright. So we select this one. Sorry, when I go to the sun and then say 8, we also shoot in more light into there. Here again, when we experiment with sunlight, be aggressive. Value of 1. Well, that looks kind of very computer graphic. And it's just too dull. 10, that's already better. 20, yeah, has a really good punch. 60, maybe a little bit too much. It's also very good to go ahead and look at photographs to study how something looks. But with the strength of 20 for the sun, what we now really can observe nicely, for example, on the ceiling, is how the individual color bands really nicely blend together. Since we're using a solid color, let me show you what happens when we desaturate this. You see this actually turning more white, and then basically the white sunlight comes through. So the red really blocks a lot of the other color spectrum and makes it darker. Okay, very good. That was kind of like everything for this type of a study. In this scene, as you can see, I created a small architecture where we have a human figure, a big main room, some cavities, and some interesting openings into the individual spaces. And this is actually a really great test study for architecture to also show how, when we place lights or illuminating surfaces into architecture, how we can fill a space kind of like with color. So here I will go ahead and position myself a camera. Shift A, there we are. Bring this over. Press N, 90, 0, and 0. Bring this up. And I have to press this button here, or this one. Go to the camera. There we are. Move this back a little bit. And now I would like to have a square image. 1080 there. And then we move in a little bit. Let's say like this. Oh, this is fine. This is good. Maybe a little bit higher. Perfect. Very good. So if we now turn on the rendering, now it's pitch black. Okay, so let's add some materials. First, we want to give a main material. Now the world is also turned off. There's no light. Then let's go into edit mode. We select the top wall, new material, new, assign, ceiling, and we switch this to emission. Now look at this. That's pretty cool. Or we can play now with the color, make this maybe a nice blue or something. I press tab to exit the edit mode, or I can stay in edit mode. In here in the render tab, I turn off these overlays. So it looks like just a rendering without the wires. It's actually really nice. So let's go ahead and add some additional light. Here, I will select this wall, new, assign, yellow. We switch this to emission and make this a yellow. Ah, look at this. This is beautiful how this washes over. Can do the same here, simply assign. What about here? We say this should get it. Wow, look at this play, like this really nice gradient. If we do this on this back wall, the light really just shines directly towards us. That's maybe not so good. So assign the wall color. Maybe we use simply this. It's a little bit too weak. Well, I mean, what about the ceiling? Or maybe there? Yeah, okay. We can increase the power of the light itself a little bit too. No, this is actually really quite nice. I would like to change my camera a little bit because here I don't see what's happening below. So this camera, I move down. Yeah, maybe like this, and then see if I shift this up. Yeah, no, actually, this previous look here is better. This is really nice. We can, if we want to play, we can make a new color, new, and assign. Let's say we make this one red and emission there. Now we can just play, for example, with these different rooms and explore how everything could look. In this case here for this exercise, I keep this at these two colors because that actually works really, really well. So far, everything we do is work with a basic color for the architecture here, and then these light colors. Now also here, if we start changing everything, Can also be quite interesting to see how this works. Look, our green, sorry, our yellow light looks green now. That's actually quite interesting. That's black. There. Okay, and let's go back to plain white. There. Maybe a little bit lower, 0.8. What we now can do is to add a little bit more also of a realism to this is give these materials of the floor actually a little bit of a definition. So for example, make this reflective. So I zoom in and then I simply select these individual faces. Here I might see through my rendering or the camera. Clock, 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 clock. There we are. Then new, new assign. I call this one floor. No, this is just there, and then turn specularity on. There, you see this now. The wall, by the way, is actually reflective. Well, look at this interesting effect. But I want this to be not reflective, just a matte finish. There we are. Well, it looks really nice. So we can select this one, new, new. Let's say assign, and then this is floor 2. And maybe make this darker. And then floor here, add a little bit of reflectivity, roughness to it, so it doesn't look so super glossy. Oop, that was the wrong slider. Yeah, look at that. No? The more interesting the architecture is, the more geometry it has. Now, obviously, then for interior as well as exterior, there's really a lot we can do via light and color to play kind of like with the architecture and create very interesting lighting effects or illusions. And with all this, we are done for today. Hooray! In this scene, as you can see, I already prepared a small scenery. So we have some furniture and some lighting objects, and this is a really great test case to demonstrate how lighting interacts with geometry and also with color. So, for example, here we have a lampshade. Now we can put a light in and then see how the lampshade blocks the light, how it illuminates the room. What happens when we make the lampshade, for example, translucent? Here we have a small tube. We can create a nice light wash effect on the wall with this because we block the light through the tube and only let it basically get through at the end. It's open and so forth. Okay, so let's do it. So let's start actually with our lampshade. I press Shift S, cursor to selected, and then Shift A and add a point light. I will go and say frame selected so I can zoom right onto the object, Z and Y frame, and there we can see there's my little light. And the light should have a little bit of a radius. There we are. Very good. Very nice. Okay, so let's press Z and render. And there we see this. By the way, this radius, why did I do the radius? The smaller the radius, you see the smaller the light and the sharper actually the shadow. I'm simulating kind of like a light bulb. If I make this really big, now we get a very soft shadow. I do have actually the denoising starting pretty early. Maybe here in this case, I go ahead and set this to 50 in my case. So the details will be less washed out. Okay, very good. But what's actually really nice, what you can see based on where this light source is, the lampshade blocks it. And look at this really interesting lighting detail we have here at the bottom, the shadow here it casts. So here, this actually works. I have to go into edit mode and move this actually down a little bit. There. So because it was actually inside the lamp. And look at this thingy up on top. It looks quite nice. Then there we have basically the same. Okay, we go back to the lamp and say here 1.5 inch for the radius. So it's kind of like a 3-inch diameter. Very good. Okay. Let's take a look at our element here. So this is basically a tube, which is open there. So Shift S, cursor to selected, and then Shift A, add a point light. Also here, we want to give this a small radius. There we are. And in the side view, I'm going to rotate this a little bit till these arrows line up. I'm actually in local orientation, and now I can move this light object more into the tube or move this further to the end. And you see how the more it gets to the end, the more it actually washes out. We do have actually a spotlight, which kind of like works like a flashlight. So from one point, like a cone, the light comes out. But with geometry, we can basically design and model actually these light patterns we want. Because if we take a look at a luminar or like at a casing of a lighting design, we just rebuild it, put a light emitting object or material in it, and get a pretty close result. Well, it looks pretty nice actually. One of my very interesting exercises also, how can light with furniture work? So there's our cabinet. I will select kind of like this piece, Shift S, cursor to selected, Shift A. Let's add an area light. We make this rectangle and the y-axis maybe 1 inch, kind of like a strip. And then here is maybe 50 inches. Very good. And then we can bring this back. I'll move this forward. Yeah. No, so this is kind of like a small LED strip. Maybe it shouldn't be so strong, just give a subtle effect. So maybe 1 here is fine. And it's interesting to see how the light goes down now and bounces off and illuminates the rest of our environment. I do have a little bit of a world strength here turned on. So maybe if I turn this to 0, there we see this even better, what only is being illuminated. And we can go to a side view, press Shift D, move this up, rotate with R and -90, and we put an LED strip right behind. There, look at that. That looks actually pretty cool, huh? This black and white rendering, and you see this really nice silhouette in front. Now, because this is just a strip, we could, for example, say, well, let's make this 55 inches. Okay. Shift D and move this down. Okay. Shift D, R, and 90. We rotate this. G and move this to here. And then, what is it? Maybe 30? No, 25. Yeah, that's actually close. Let's say 24. Okay. Shift D and Shift D and Y, I mean, not X. Bring it over. There you go. More. Now we have a really nice kind of like rim behind it. That looks kind of cool. We have to admit. Okay. Really nice. We also have these spheres here. So far we only use geometry to be illuminated. Sorry, so far we only used light objects to illuminate geometry, or we can also use geometry via material to emit light. So this sphere here selected, I go and add a new material. I can simply swap this out to be an emission material. It's easier to select. And there we see, emits light. Shift click, shift click, shift click, shift click, Control L, link material. And there we are. There we have our nice sphere lights. And then we can play with the strength. Or because it's one material they all share, we can play with the color, for example. But for the moment, let's set this all back to just one. Very good. Very nice. So what's actually interesting also in this case here, because we have so much geometry to interact with, is also to think about light color. One thing that's really great in Blender is we can link objects or materials. So when we, in theory, later do an animation or study, it's very easy to adjust certain features. So what I'm talking about is, for example, here, these lamps or these LED strips, I all want to have exactly the same material being used. So look here, I'm clicking use node for all those. Now you see this, there, there, and there. That too. And now, for example, for the strength, I'm going to do the following. And we'll go at input and a value. And let's say 1. And then add input and RGB color. Okay. So the trick is now these two elements I make globally accessible. Control G. So we make a group. And then now there's the group. When I press tab, I exit editing the group. If I select the group, press tab, I go in. So here the same, Control G and tab. Then I can drag this one in, drag this one in. No. So when I go in here and say now, make this blue, you see this changed. Go to here, press tab, change this to 4. It changed the strength. 0 turns it off, as you see. How do we actually share this now with the other materials? Well, we can go and say add node group this, node group that, and these things don't really make much sense. So this is actually the color. So LED strip color. You see now this has a name. And here we call this LED strip power. Zack, zack. Yeah, I know you might have to adjust these things at the beginning a little bit, but then this way you can link various different objects or lights. You do this one time, and then it's fine. Shift A. We also have groups here. Oh, node group. Hold on 1 second. Shift A. Oh, shoot. LED strip power. That is where this is hidden. Sorry, my fault. And Shift A. There. Bring this one in. Properties. LED strip color. Sock. Yeah. And then you do the same. Now you see this is actually then super easy. Color and power. And the same here. Okay, very nice. Now, because now if I go into, let's correct this spelling error. If I go in and change this, it changes all the other pieces. That's kind of cool. Now these colors I can also add to the other lights. So turn on, turn on. So for example, this light, this one, use node, Shift A. For example, color, I can put this one in if I want to use it. Shift A, power strip, if I want to use the power actually from there. But let's say I only want to have the same color being used. And then I only use this. And even here for the material, it's exactly the same. So between light objects and light emitting materials. Now look at this. That's actually quite nice. So now we can play around and, for example, very quickly try to see how does this space look, for example, green illuminated or red, magenta, yellow, cyan, or so, or just plain white. I'm going to add one more light, an area light. This one we make 4 feet, actually 8 feet. G, bring this up kind of like to there. Click and drag. Curious how this looks. Yeah, it gives a good basic illumination. And also for this area light, there we are. Shift A, group and color. It's kind of like changed a little bit. So here, zuck, change all this so it's a nice and white. Okay, very good. Perfect. Flop. There we are. Yeah, now then this area is a little bit more illuminated, not so bland. Because what we can do now is, for example, take a look at what happens when we say, I'm going to add a material to this sofa. And let's say that simply is yellow. We make this a very basic, non-reflective matte material. And then here, this object, that should be the same material. Oh, what's the name? Yellow fabric. There we are. Now, because if you now go to the colors and start making this yellow, making this red. Now look actually how the red gets very dark because it's bluish. It's actually a really interesting effect. So if you have LEDs at home and colorful objects, take a look at these objects during the spectrum of your LED strip. It's a really interesting study. So let's say we make the light yellow, and then here our object. Now we make red or cyan. Oh, look, that is green. No, it looks green. But in all reality, it's actually cyan. It's just an illusion. So cyan, cyan. Now it's the same. Look how the cyan looks like blue because we mixed the magenta in. Okay, very nice. I actually realized there was one tiny little lamp I forgot to add right here. Shift S cursor to selection, Shift A point light. Also here I move this one up. Let's say 1.5 for the radius. Also here you see it's very nice how this interacts with the geometry. I will select all these objects with control and then M, new collection, and say lights. So I can quickly turn them all off. And the sphere lights too. And now here we move this one more inwards. We have to be careful that it does not cut through. But there, like basically the light goes down, bounces off, and then hits the wall. It's actually really beautiful how this effect works. And the more I bring this one down, you can see again how the shadows change. So let's actually show all the material, all the lights again. One material I didn't show yet is the lampshade. So I will hide this. Lampshade makes sense to give it a name. Turn all the stuff off. This one goes to there and hide. And now this material, I switch from principled to translucent. Now with transparent, well, it basically is transparent. That's kind of like a colored glass. That's also kind of cool. You can see what actually it is creating. Green, yellow and blue is creating green. That's also pretty nice actually how this works here. And the how clear white, the more clear transparent something is, the more black, the more opaque it is. So pure black, pure white is transparency of being opaque, and then color is just tinting it. Let's switch this actually to translucent and see what happens. So translucent is actually making the object still visible, but the light simply gets through. So it's kind of like the object is, unlike glass, not transparent. We still see it. So this is a very easy way, for example, to simulate lampshades. And then based on how translucent it should be, we can adjust this again with the white or black value. And as you noticed, if we give this a tint, also here, it starts then colorizing everything. So I hope actually at this point you start seeing how useful 3D rendering is to study lighting and how materials and colors can interact with each other. And I think that's actually all for this one. To start, I will add a plane with Shift A and then make this plane to be 30 feet by 20 feet. Zoom out a little bit. There is a scale factor. We're going to apply the scale. Very good. Then we're going to add another object. Shift A and plane. This one here we make X 20 feet and then 60 for Y. Zoom out G and Y, move this up. We have vertex snapping, GY, hold control, click, and done. Very good. Also here, let's go and apply the scale. This is going to be where the pool is, and this is the main area. We can create another plane. This plane will be 40 by 40 feet. By the way, Control A is apply scale menu. And then we move this one up to 14 feet off the ground. There we are. You can see I'm actually blocking everything out quite nicely. Then let's create actually these walls. Shift A, make a plane. Then along X is actually 1 foot, and along Y is 10 feet. Also here, Control A, apply scale. We can move this over to X minus 7 or minus 6. Then I press Alt D and the X key, move this over. And here we say this simply 6. So you see this +6, -6. This is across the y-axis. If I go into edit mode, I press E along the z-axis by 9 feet. Enter. Let's actually exit the edit mode. The scale is applied. That is good. Let's go back into edit mode. Face select, select this. Then we can press I to create an insert like this. And then we press E to create an extrusion inside. Very nice. Now it starts to look like something. This one is actually showing the piece on the outside. So along the z-axis here, 180 degrees, we simply rotate it. Very nice. I would like to have a small depression there. So I go to top view, Z and wireframe. Then I go into edit mode and press I. And then scale this one down, zoom in a little bit, S and X. This, for example, is 1 foot, so this is ±4 feet. We can verify this. Click and drag with the mouse. Yeah, nearly 4 feet. Very good. And to delete this at the X key. And then S and Y scale this. So 1, 2, 3, so it's 6 feet by 4 feet. Very nice. And then E along the z-axis down -1 foot. Actually, 1 foot is maybe too big, so I press the delete key to go back, and I press the plus/minus key to go into the equation, and then simply 6 inches and enter. So while I'm actually working with feet, when I press the equal plus key, I'm going to expression, then I can write kind of like more equations, like 6 feet, 6 inches. Okay, very good. This looks actually pretty nice. Let's leave edit mode. We can go into object mode here and then edit mode. Also here we press I for creating an insert, kind of like this. Very nice. And then I press X to delete this face. Press A to select everything. E, we extrude this up by 1 foot. That's good. Beautiful. Good. We need to have some posts to hold this onto. So let's create some magical columns. Shift A and going to start with a circle. This circle 64 vertices and the radius 3 inches. That makes a diameter of 6 inches. This should be perfectly centered. I know the object center is at -6. So this one goes to -6. And whoops, wrong one, -6 there. But actually, I can put this to -8. And there we are. If I now say Alt D, move this to here, then this will be -6, and this will be 8. So it puts it up there. Click these two, Alt D and X, move this over. With the Alt or Option key pressed, I click in this field and say 6, enter. That moves them both objects. So because we did Alt D, these are clones. I can select one object, press Tab to go into edit mode, E. Oh, yeah, it's a face mode, but we have to switch to the edge mode because there is no face yet. Then, or point mode, E and Z. I'm actually moving this G and Z on hold control up to there. And I would like to have kind of like 2 feet of a light element. So GZ -2, and then E and Z hold control and click. There we are. Perfect. Oh, this looks good. We can select with Shift and mouse button all those, right click, shade smooth. Let's actually add the camera. Shift A. Here is the camera. Let's move the camera along the y-axis back 90 degrees. And this is all 0. Then we can move the camera up. Let's actually right click, split vertical. Then we can here look through the camera. Press N and T to hide the icons, and there. I would like to have actually more squarish image. So let's go to 1000 by 1000, for example. And then the camera, I'm going to set to 20 millimeter. So it's a little bit like a fisheye lens, as you can see. Let's move this one further up, say like this. And then we can move this a little bit further in there. Okay. And maybe a little bit further down. Yeah, let's keep this actually for the moment this way. Here we would like to have our swimming pool in it. And at the end, then the wall. I'm going to build this wall first. Shift A and plane. Then this plane along the x-axis will be 20 inches, 2 inches, that's fine. And then I move this one up and back. There we are. I'm holding the control key. And then I go into edit mode, press the tab key, E, and how does this look? So this is kind of like 10 feet, 15 feet. Yeah, 15 feet here. Move this one up. See, this is actually local and global. So these are on the y-axis at this position and along the z-axis this side. So it's basically the same here. Good. Also here, let's do a small inset. Oh, yeah, we didn't do what didn't we do? Apply the scale in object mode, Control A, scale, go back, and then there, and E, and there we are. Now this looks actually pretty nice already. Now we can leave edit mode. So here now we have actually our pool. That's quite cool. Then there we're going to edit mode and press I and create kind of like this pool. maybe like this. I want to have a small rim around it. And then I press E to extrude it down a little bit. Very good. Cool. Not bad. As you can see, around there is nothing. So let's fill this actually in. I press Shift A, make a plane. And then this plane, I press G, move this to here, G and then B, and then mouse button click and click, I snap it to there. Can go into edit mode, edge select, G and B, click this edge to there. And then this edge, I simply extend a little bit. This now I press E and Y and hold Control to snap to there. Select this edge, E and X, snap to there. So you see this is actually patched in. So you can see that's pretty easy. To do the same on the other side, what we can simply do is the following. The easiest way here, I select these two, Shift D and X, bring this over, GB, click and click, edge select, E and X, hold Control, there we are. And then I can select these edges, E and Y, extend this a little bit, and then fill it if needed. If I press 0, I go into the camera. Now there you can see everything. Yeah, that's actually, it's quite nice. We're getting close. Now, along the walk area, we would like to have some ground lights. So we can do this with some very basic cubes. Shift A, make a cube, and then click and drag. We say this one is actually 10 inches. Control A, apply the scale. Go to this view, the cube we move up and move down, hold Control. I'm snapping this on the ground, bring this over. There, I'm kind of like maybe trying to line this one up. Okay, and now I can multiply this. So, and like to make this nice and even. So I go with the array modifier 6, but not along the x-axis, along the y-axis. There. Maybe like this. Well, this looks pretty good. To have the same on the opposite side, Alt D and X, move this over and just eyeball it so they're nicely in the center. Well, like this. Perfect. Very good. Yeah. So, one last thing, actually, we need a water surface. So I'm going to edit mode. This face is selected. If not selected here, just click it, Shift D and Z, move this up. And then we can press P to separate it. Makes it its own body. And leave edit mode. Very good. We can then put the camera into the scene collection, close this collection and say geometry, for example. And this way then everything is a little bit cleaned up. The lights, for example, if I want, new collection cube lights, can put it into that. So it's easier to see and turn off or on. Beautiful. So let's verify our settings, cycles, GPU, sampling for previous 2020, 150 is for final rendering, and we have high contrast for color management. So we're all good. Let's go to the world. This is 0. Press Z and render. That's pretty black. Z and solid. Actually, when we press now Control B and drag over the window for the camera, and then Z and render, it only renders inside that window. Little tip, renders faster. We're going to use the node editor at one point, so I will actually join this, right click horizontal, go to here, right click split here. This goes back into the camera, and this we make the shader editor. There, beautiful. Okay, very good. Now, based on your machine, you can turn on rendering, so it's black, and now we start actually adding lights. So this is actually our mesh light. Call this mesh light. Can zoom in here. This we don't need anymore. Press X to delete, Shift A, shader, emission. There we are. Plug it in. Oh, look at that. There's light. All our objects actually should need a material. Just a material. Let's say we can call this base or whatever. So all these objects I'm selecting here right now should get this base material. To do this, Control L, and we link the materials. Because now I can go ahead into edit mode, then Z and object mode, solid view. I'm selecting all these faces and I'm creating a new slot. You see, actually, we can do this also here, so we don't have to mess in this view. New slot, mesh light, and assign. Wow, look at there, we get light. It's kind of cool, no? So let's do the same actually with the pieces here. Leave edit mode. Select this object, go into edit mode, and then here we select the side, the top, and the back. Here again, we make a new slot. Into the slot, we load the mesh light, and then we hit assign. And now we have light there. Now it's actually quite nice how everything looks. If this should be a night, we also need to actually have a night sky. Okay, so let's go to the world, and here we are going to add actually a sky texture. There we are. Let's maybe set this to 1 or 0.1. And there we see this. So we will go here to the world. There we see all the stuff too. This is a little bit bigger, so instead of zooming in here and going up and down because my screen is smaller, I'm going to use this display here right now. So what do we have? We have a sun disk, and then we have a sky. And now a strength for the sun, a strength for, well, the sky. I go back to 1 and 1, and I zoom out a little bit. And then we can actually rotate around, and notice here is something happening, and that's actually where the sun is. So let's bring this a little bit further down and pay attention to how the colors are changing. There's the sun, by the way. Now the sun is really bright, so we bring this up. It is really bright. And then with the rotation, now we just go left and right. Okay. Oh, sleepy time. I will look through the camera and then I will bring the sun actually down till it starts to look more like a nice evening. There, look at this. This looks really nice. I know actually from tinkering with this, if I increase the ozone, it makes the sky a little bit more bluish. Can bring this up a little bit. Yeah, a little there. Okay. There. Oh, this looks quite nice. Cool. Okay. Now, because we don't have anything in the background, this looks kind of missing. So what do we do? Well, let's use an old Hollywood trick. We just do a matte painting. Well, instead of a matte painting, we just create a geometry. So I go to, let's say here, this view. Then I press Shift A, make a plane, move this plane back. Then I go into edit mode. I will select these points, press X and delete. Select these points, go to this view, Z and wireframe. And now I can see where these objects are. Okay, so you're kind of here. Cool. And then I select this point, move this up, and then do some, yeah, you see correctly, some zigzag stuff. And there. Shift click these two, F, select all, F, fillet, and leave edit mode via the tab key. And there you can see there is actually something coming up. Now we can just modify this a little bit as desired. Well, it's a very easy way to quickly make something at least happening in the background. Here we get a really nice bluish tint actually from the sky. This looks really cool. There isn't much happening here in the front, so let's actually add there a small floating cube. Shift A, plane. Oh, that's good. And then tab E. How much? 2 inches. 2 feet, sorry. And tab. We can leave edit mode. Pretty cool. Here we can turn actually these overlays off, so we only see the final rendering. Now look at this. Now the front is a little bit dark, and maybe what can we do with these pillows? Did I say pillow? Pillars, columns. We can select with B all these upper edges, and then we switch back to object, make a new slot, select the mesh light, and assign it. There. We can press A, S, and Shift Z, and then actually this way we can scale this up. Maybe a little bit bigger. So 8 inches, yeah. And this looks a little bit more stable. Very good. Beautiful. Maybe this one we can move a little bit back. Maybe we move all a little bit back. For example, this is now more in line maybe with the lights in the back. There we are. Now we have a nice front, and then there's this stuff in the back. Now here comes the final piece. Going to select this mesh, new, and then actually we go to specular. That is good. Roughness we put down to 0. Oh, and look, what do we have here? We have now a reflection. There's our water. The water, however, isn't perfectly smooth. So let's add some ripples to it. We do this quite easily to suggest that there is something happening. We will use white noise. Nope, not white noise. Which was it now, actually? Oh, this one. Yeah, the noise texture. Very good. If I put this one onto here, let's actually lower the reflectivity, maybe color. We don't really see this right now, but there's actually a noise pattern happening. Maybe let's make the sun a little bit brighter. There we can see the noise. Okay. Based on the scale, now we can adjust it. So what we can do with this noise pattern, we actually will change the reflectivity by giving this a bump mapping. So reflectivity back, and then Shift A, we will select the bump, put the factor into the height, put the normal into the normal. So the reflectivity will be adjusted, and there you can see already what's happening. What about 20? Okay, bump mapping is way too strong. 0.1. There, look at this. 0.01. Then now we can see there are like really gentle waves happening. It's not 100% realistic, but this is just a very quick tool to give you this idea of that there is something going on. I don't know if I really like this lower illumination rim there. So I will go to this piece, select the lower part, select the base mat material and click assign. Yeah, this actually looks more consistent. Kind of like also what we have here. Okay, but now to make the water pop more, let's add actually light that's inside the water, under it. So Shift A, add an area light. We move this to here along the y-axis minus 90 degrees. Very good. Z in wireframe. I can move this down. Then this light we turn into a rectangle. Y is definitely 50 feet. No, maybe 52. Careful with clicking on the handle here. It overlays actually with the scaling of the light, which is not what I want. And maybe 6 inches. So I'd say 3 inches. A small strip. Move it to here. There we are. And then we bring this to here. Okay. There we are. Very nice. We can increase the strength a little bit. There we are. And then we can go ahead and give this a nice cyan color. Oh, actually, that was the light I meant for the water. We give this a nice color here. There we are. And then when we lower the reflectivity, sorry, the transparency, you see actually how the light under it actually starts shining through. Now this light we would like to have 2 times. So Alt D and escape. This is on this direction, and we simply turn this value into something positive. Oh, interesting. Let's move this to here, and then 90 degrees to rotate it. And there we are. Pretty cool. So then based on where these two lights actually are, now you see they will go further down and you can see it's a little bit lower. If we put this over the water, for example, then you see the reflection of the light over the water surface. So there you can see the lights actually are on top. And that's something we can do too. And we can, for example, save this transparency effect. It also gives you this illusion, but here in this case, the lights are clearly actually over the water. So I'm trying to get this nice and close, like it is actually a recessed light. There. Oh, this looks actually pretty cool, no? Okay. So the small bump mapping really helps with creating this reflection, but that has a little bit of structure to it. Beautiful. So to perfect this, maybe we can think about also the light color. So when I select this object and then go to mesh light, this is currently using just white. We don't really work with color that is white. We work with color that has a color temperature. So Shift A, and then we go to converter, black body, add this to here, and now you can see how beautifully everything starts looking. A nice, really warm, I can't say that word correctly, incandescent, I hope that's correct, incandescent light, or 2500, 5000. Let's go actually with a bluish light, maybe 8000. No? So you see that actually that really then starts adding to it. Maybe the world here, we bring this a tick further down. So the sun goes down a little bit more. And there we are. Now, doesn't this look beautiful? And that's it. I shouldn't have said that's it, because I just realized we have here left and right some issues. This stuff isn't wide enough. Easy trick, we simply select all these edges, S and X, and then we scale them apart. So now this is nicely filled. And then this geometry, Z and Y frame, I can also see it's actually not going left and right. So I can simply say S and X, stretch this a little bit. There. Z and rendered. This actually fills everything much better now. Now the last thing we could do, play with the camera, for example, be lower down, lower up. Now it's up to you to decide from what angle you would like to show this. Do we go further out? Do we go actually maybe further in? And while this is rendering, this stuff looks actually pretty cool from the outside. So let's say we go to top view, press 7. So just as a note, this is actually a really nice way how to render visually also a plan view of a lighting plan by simply doing an orthographic rendering. So it's a plan view, or I mean the elevation view here doesn't show much because we have a black background. But this actually looks pretty nice. Let's go back into the camera. And yeah, I would say that's it. We are done.